Thanks for your time. Appreciate it, Vusi. So let's talk about the way in which the situation is being handled. We have been discussing it for well over a year now. How do you feel about the deportations?
Well, look, I think our biggest concern to start with as far as the deportations are concerned is that, if the people that we're talking about, and as far as we know, had, asylum seeker permits, either Section 22s or not, the Department of Home Affairs cannot just prefer to deport them without allowing them to exhaust all the, avenues that they can pursue. Because for starters, if, as the minister says, that they have been rejected by SCRA, it means they still have got a judicial review which they can basically pursue in terms of Section 33 of the Constitution of South Africa. So, the mere fact that, people that were actually on strike, because they felt that their rights were not being properly protected, and the department simply, moves, by trying to deport them on its own, if that is the reason for the deportation, it does not really satisfy us.
Well, remember that these are people who refused to be reintegrated back into South African communities where they came from, and they were refusing to go back to their home countries. So the only option, the department says, is for them to be deported.
Well, look, true as the case, it is true that, we have some people that practically said, look, we cannot go back to society. But some of these people actually said we can't go back because, they are taxed. And some of them did not have the the part that wanted to reintegrate them, particularly was where they should go back on their own, to find their way back into the community. But you must also accept that in terms of the new Refugees Act, I think there is a different process that's got to be followed. So when people had lost everything because they stayed for over 6 months, while they were protesting, hoping that the UNHCR could address or help address their problems, it meant that they had nothing. Going back into communities, it meant that they had nothing to go back to, and they needed to be assisted, to start back into the community.
But the UNHCR said it couldn't help them. Just remember, let's put this into context, right? We obviously know the circumstances about these refugees and asylum seekers because we've been covering the story for over a year now. The UNHCR said that they cannot take them to other countries except that of their origin. And even if they wanted to go back to their home countries, they would have had to work through the South African government. Now, these are people who are saying they don't want to go back to their home countries and they don't want to be reintegrated into South African communities because they fear for their safety. So what then is the alternative for the South African government?
Well, when you look at the people, for the South African government, it was actually in the hands, it's supposed to be in the hands of UNHCR. This is what we said even when we had meetings with the UNHCR, the South African Human Rights Commission and, Department of Home Affairs. Then what was happening is that the UNHCR was passing the buck, in fact, because these people are supposed to be somehow still under the UNHCR, which is the one that should be saying, it should be processing how they should be dealt with, because they are now, asylum seekers, or they have Section 22s, which meant that the Department of Home Affairs is not the one that, is supposed to be dealing with it, but simply because UNHCR, washed its hands and said, they are actually visitors of, the South African government, which we know it is not true, because in a way, UNHCR is an international body which is tasked with the responsibility of dealing, with asylum seekers. So in this particular case, Home Affairs accepted a responsibility which is not entirely its own responsibility, and it has to take decisions which are in a way against humanitarian principles, because you cannot, even in terms of the Refugees Act, Section 2, take a person back to their country where they fear that they are going to be persecuted. That is clearly embedded in Section 2, of the Refugees Act.
So what must happen now then, if that's not going to be what you say is the best way forward? Because they don't want to go back into the communities in South Africa either.
Well, look, one of the things that we said was supposed to happen, we know that the minister referred to the portfolio committee meeting that was held in March. But look, what is happening is, just like when the minister refers to the fact that they are taken to court and the court must confirm their deportation, the issue is you're taking the people without any of their rights. What we had proposed was a meeting where all the stakeholders were going to negotiate to make them understand that at least their rights were protected. If these people continue to protest, and their major concern was that nobody seemed to be standing for them to say, but look, our biggest concern is that we are being attacked. What is the government going to do in the event that we are being attacked? And the government responded, for example, by saying, we are ensuring that the National Action Plan is being put into action, and anyone who's going to be seen attacking, an asylum seeker is going to be arrested. We've got, legislative provisions that talk about minimum sentences for people that attack or murder, asylum seekers. That would have given them some bit of, comfort, knowing that the law is going to be put in place in such a way that they have been dealt with as a vulnerable group. But that particular meeting, which was held in March, it excluded some of the organizations like our organization that has been dealing with the real interests and concerns of these people, to the extent that the input that we have put in to say, from where we have been up to now, people are willing to be reintegrated, but there must be a commitment on the part of government, which was the only thing that was missing. Because towards March, there was an agreement, there was a discussion where these asylum seekers were willing to sit down and agree on the way forward, but provided the government was going to make certain undertakings as far as their safety was concerned.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Gephardt Hussein, Vusi Sibanda from the African Diaspora Forum.